Picture this. You're walking along a sun-drenched Mediterranean shore, your fingers brushing against a piece of pottery half buried in the sand. It's an amphora, one of those classic two-handled jars you've seen in museums or history books. To most people, it's just an ancient container, something that once held wine or olive oil. But what if I told you that this unassuming vessel was far more than a storage pot? What if it was, in fact, a secret map, a coded guide that helped sailors navigate stormy seas, avoid hidden reefs, and discover safe harbors thousands of years ago? For centuries, these amphorae have been quietly holding their secrets in plain sight. We've admired their curves, studied their inscriptions, and displayed them behind glass, yet we've mostly missed their true purpose. These pots weren't just made to carry goods, they were crafted to carry knowledge. Ancient potters, working in dimly lit workshops from Greece to Phoenicia, designed these jars with intentional shapes, subtle symbols, and even specific types of clay, all to embed vital information meant only for those who knew how to look. In this video, we're going to uncover that hidden world. Together, we'll explore how a simple handle could point the way to calmer waters, how the curve of a jar's belly might hint at distant trade routes, and how symbols etched into the clay served as a silent language among sailors and merchants. We'll dive into the minds of these ancient artisan cartographers and reveal why they went to such lengths to conceal maps inside everyday objects. This isn't just a story about pottery, it's about human ingenuity, the thirst for exploration, and the incredible ways ordinary things can hold extraordinary secrets. So settle in and let's begin this journey into the past where every amphora has a tale to tell, and nothing is ever quite as simple as it seems. At first glance, an amphora seems utterly straightforward. A clay jar with two handles, a pointed base, and a simple mission: to carry wine, olive oil, or grain across the vast, unpredictable waters of the ancient Mediterranean. For centuries, that's exactly what historians and archaeologists believed. These vessels were the shipping containers of their day, ubiquitous and, frankly, a bit boring to anyone but a specialist. But what if we've been missing the point entirely? What if the true genius of the amphora wasn't just in what it carried, but in what it was? These humble pots were, in fact, sophisticated data storage devices, crafted with a secret dual purpose that turned every merchant ship into a floating library of navigational intelligence. The real magic lies in the subtle, intentional deviations from a standard form. While amphorae might look similar to the untrained eye, ancient potters were masters of nuance. They understood that the slightest variation in design could convey a wealth of information to an initiated sailor. Take the curvature of a handle, for instance. A handle that arcs in a specific, pronounced way might not just be an ergonomic choice. It could be a coded reference to the sweeping curve of a particular coastline or the safe passage around a hidden peninsula. Similarly, the angle of the jar's base, whether it was sharply tapered or more gently rounded, might correlate directly with the depth of water in a recommended harbor or the approach to a river delta. These weren't accidental features or simple artistic flourishes. They were a silent, geometric language. Even the very material of the pot held clues. The composition of the clay itself, sourced from specific regional deposits, acted as a kind of chemical signature. A sailor familiar with these subtleties could look at the color and texture of an amphora and know not only where it was made, but potentially the network of trade routes it was intended to travel. A vessel from a certain workshop in Crete, with its distinct reddish-brown clay, might have been designed specifically for a route heading north towards the Aegean Islands, its material subtly signaling its intended journey. This transformed the amphora from a passive object into an active participant in navigation, a durable, unassuming guide that could withstand the rigors of a long voyage. This hidden layer of meaning completely redefines our understanding of these everyday objects. They were far more than just storage. They were portable, deniable, and incredibly durable maps. In a world where written sailing instructions were rare, valuable, and vulnerable to water, theft, or espionage, the amphora offered a perfect solution. Its secrets were baked into its very structure, invisible to rivals or pirates who might intercept a ship, yet perfectly clear to a merchant or captain who knew the code. This brilliant fusion of utility and secrecy allowed ancient trade networks to flourish, protecting invaluable commercial knowledge and ensuring that vital routes remained known only to those who held the key to reading the pottery. It was a system of communication so elegant and so discreet that it remained hidden in plain sight for nearly 2,000 years. So if the amphora's basic form was a clever disguise, its true genius was revealed in the silent, sculptural language of its shape. Think of it not as a simple pot, but as a three-dimensional map, where every curve, angle, and proportion held a specific meaning understood by a select few. This wasn't about artistic expression, it was about precision engineering for the purpose of covert communication. A potter might subtly elongate the neck of a jar, a deviation invisible to most, but to a trained sailor, that elongation was a clear warning. This route involves navigating tight, dangerous straits, so steer carefully. Conversely, an amphora with an unusually broad, rounded body wasn't just made to hold more olive oil. Its generous form was a message in itself, signaling a journey across open, predictable waters where the sailing would be calm and the holds could be filled to capacity. These design choices were far from arbitrary. They were the result of meticulous calculation and a deep, shared understanding of geometry and maritime geography. Potters and sailors operated within a closed system of knowledge, a kind of guild secret where a specific ratio between the height of the jar and the width of its belly could correspond to the actual distance between two ports. The thickness of the clay at the base might indicate the depth of a harbor entrance, allowing a captain to know if his ship's draft was too deep to enter safely. This was a language built on trust and consistency, where a single misinterpreted curve could lead a ship onto the rocks. The sheer subtlety of this system was its greatest strength. To any rival merchant or potential pirate inspecting captured cargo, these amphorae were just jars. They held value in their contents, not in their form. This allowed vital navigational intelligence to be transported openly and safely across the known world, hidden in the most unassuming objects imaginable. The secret wasn't written down, it was baked into the very structure of everyday trade goods. It is only through modern analysis that we've begun to crack this ancient code. By using advanced 3D scanning technology to compare thousands of amphorae recovered from shipwrecks across the Mediterranean, archaeologists have started to identify these non-random patterns. They can map clusters of jars with specific shape characteristics to known, historically treacherous sailing routes. A group of amphorae with consistently reinforced, thick handles, for example, is often found in wrecks along routes known for violent, unpredictable winds, a design feature suggesting sailors needed a stronger grip on both the jar and, metaphorically, their course. This painstaking research is slowly reconstructing a lost cartographic language, one that used clay and geometry instead of parchment and ink, proving that sometimes the most powerful messages are the ones that are never spoken aloud. But the shape was only the beginning of the code. If you look even closer at these ancient jars, you'll notice something else: faint scratches, small stamped impressions, or seemingly random symbols painted near the rim or base. For generations, these were dismissed as makers' marks, ownership stamps, or simple decorative flourishes. We now believe they were anything but. These inscriptions and symbols formed a second, more detailed layer of the secret language, acting as precise hidden markers that provided specific navigational intelligence to those who could decipher them. Consider a series of small dots carved near an amphora's handle. To the casual observer, they might look like accidental nicks from a tool or mere counting marks. But for a sailor preparing for a night voyage, that cluster of dots could be a direct representation of a key constellation, like the pattern of stars in Ursa Major, serving as a celestial reminder to steer by the North Star. A single wavy line incised around the neck might not be decoration. It could be a minimalist map of a particular river estuary, indicating a safe place to find fresh water or a hidden inlet to wait out a storm. The genius of this system was its simplicity and deniability. These symbols were so small, so integrated into the fabric of the pot, that they were effectively invisible to anyone not specifically looking for them. Animal motifs offer some of the most compelling evidence. A tiny dolphin stamp wasn't just a pretty picture. In the context of these secret codes, it frequently signaled the presence of actual dolphin pods known to frequent certain coastal waters, which sailors could follow to land or to rich fishing grounds. A bird symbol, perhaps an eagle or a gull, might indicate a route where land was always within sight, a crucial piece of information for navigators wary of the open sea. These symbols leverage the natural world as a guide, turning observable phenomena into a durable, portable reference manual baked into clay. Perhaps the most cunning aspect of this practice was how these symbols were hidden in the most open places. Potters would often incorporate these crucial markers into their own signatures or the official stamps that denoted a jar's origin or quality control. The loop of a letter in the potter's name might be exaggerated to form a small circle representing a full moon, dictating the ideal time for departure. A regional emblem might include a pattern of lines that secretly mirrored the angle of a famous headland when viewed from the sea. This was the ultimate act of concealment. The most vital secrets were placed directly within the elements that identified the jar, making them indistinguishable from ordinary trade documentation. The map was hidden not in the shadows but in the spotlight, ensuring it would survive, be transported, and be seen by the right eyes, all while remaining utterly meaningless to everyone else. Now, let's consider the very earth from which these amphorae were born, the clay itself. This wasn't just a uniform, generic material. It was a unique geographic fingerprint, and ancient potters were masters at using its inherent properties as a third, deeply subtle layer of their hidden code. Every region around the Mediterranean had its own distinct clay deposits, each with a specific mineral cocktail that gave the fired pottery a unique color, texture, and even weight. A sailor or merchant who knew what to look for could pick up an amphora and, just by feeling its grit or noting its hue, understand not only where it was made but, more importantly, the trusted trade network it was meant to travel. Think of it like a secret handshake made of earth. A jar crafted from the famously fine, iron-rich clay of Attica in Greece would fire to a distinctive, brilliant orange-red. That vibrant color was an immediate signal of its origin, but in the context of a hidden map, that same color could take on a second meaning. Perhaps amphorae of this specific hue were predominantly used for voyages heading south towards Egypt, their warm color a subconscious cue for the direction of the scorching sun. Conversely, an amphora made from the darker, coarser clay of Etruria in Italy, which often fired to a deeper brown or gray, might be intentionally selected for journeys north into the cooler, overcast waters of the Adriatic or beyond. The potter wasn't just making a jar, they were selecting a palette to paint a secret directional signal. The process of firing the clay added another dimension to this cryptic language. By carefully controlling the temperature and oxygen levels inside the kiln, a potter could dramatically alter the final color of the very same lump of clay. A reducing fire which limits oxygen can turn red clay a smudgy gray or even black. An oxidizing fire with plenty of air brings out vibrant reds and oranges. This technical mastery allowed for incredible nuance. A potter could produce a batch of jars from identical clay, yet create a spectrum of colors, from light terracotta to deep brick red, each shade potentially corresponding to a different seasonal route, a variation in wind patterns, or the specific phase of the moon deemed auspicious for departure. This use of material science was sheer brilliance. A written message could fade, be scraped off, or be ruined by water. But the information encoded in the clay's composition and color was fired into the vessel's very soul. It was permanent, immune to the elements, and required no special tools to read, just knowledge passed down through generations of sailors and traders. It was the perfect, durable, and discreet messaging system, turning the fundamental essence of the pottery into its most guarded secret. The map wasn't just on the amphora. In a very real sense, the amphora itself was the map. And then there are the handles themselves, those elegant loops of clay we so often take for granted. We see them and think only of function, of the simple mechanics of lifting and pouring. But in the hands of an ancient potter, the handle became a powerful and discreet data port, a carefully sculpted interface between the sailor and the sea. This is where some of the most immediate and vital navigational cues were placed, designed to be felt as much as seen. A sailor wouldn't just grab a handle, he would read it, his fingers tracing its form to decode the message baked within. Consider the thickness of the grip. A handle that was deliberately thick and robust, almost cumbersome to hold, wasn't a design flaw. It was a tactile warning. This jar likely came from or was destined for a route known for ferocious, unpredictable winds. That extra thickness was a physical instruction. Hold on tight, your journey will require immense strength and constant vigilance. Conversely, a handle that was slender, elegant, and perfectly smoothed signaled a very different reality. It spoke of calm seas and favorable breezes, a route where the journey would be as smooth as the clay itself. The very feel of the handle in your palm set the expectation for the voyage ahead. The curvature told an even more detailed story. A handle with a sharp, angular bend or a pronounced twist wasn't merely an aesthetic choice. This was a specific symbol for turbulent waters, perhaps a notorious whirlpool or a strait with conflicting currents that could grab a ship's hull. Running a thumb along that abrupt turn would serve as a stark reminder of the navigational maneuver required, a sudden, sharp turn to avoid disaster. In direct opposition, a handle with a long, gentle, swooping curve was a thing of comfort and assurance. It mapped out a safe, open passage with steady winds, its flowing form mimicking the easy, rolling waves of a successful journey. The attachment points of the handles to the body of the jar added another layer of meaning. Handles set high and wide apart on the shoulder of the amphora might correlate with a wide bay or a spacious harbor entrance. Handles attached lower and closer together could indicate a narrow, constricted channel, requiring precise and careful piloting to enter. This level of intricate, actionable detail couldn't have been invented in an isolated workshop. It screams of direct, first-hand collaboration between the potter and the sailor. The potter, a master of form and material, needed the sailor's hard-won experience, his knowledge of which waves could swamp a deck, which winds could shred a sail, and which hidden reefs had claimed countless hulls. Together, they translated the chaotic, fluid language of the ocean into the solid, permanent language of clay. The handle became a trusted co-pilot, a silent guide whose advice was literally built to last, offering a reassuring grip on reality right up until the moment it was needed most. While the handles provided crucial tactile guidance, the most detailed and astonishing secrets were often hidden in the one place no one would casually look: the base of the amphora. Tucked away beneath the curved belly of the jar, this flat or slightly rounded surface was a private canvas for the ancient potter cartographer. It was here that they inscribed their most precise and complex information, safe from the prying eyes of customs officials or rival traders. Unlike the symbolic hints of the handles or the broad regional clues of the clay, the base patterns were often direct, miniature representations of geography, serving as a personal, portable atlas for the ship's navigator. These etched or molded designs were far more than simple decoration. A series of concentric circles radiating from a central point might look like a sunburst, but to a sailor, it could be a detailed star chart, with each ring representing the path of a specific celestial body used for navigation. A grid of intersecting lines wasn't just a pattern. It could be a scaled-down map of a harbor's safe anchorages, with each square indicating a different depth or bottom type. Perhaps most ingeniously, a single, continuous spiral groove winding inward could chart the entire course of a meandering river, from its wide mouth to a specific trading post deep inland, with a small dot or notch marking the exact destination. The base was a concentrated repository of geographic intelligence, compressed into a space no larger than a human hand. The practical application of these base maps was brilliantly simple. Before setting sail, a captain or navigator could take a new amphora, press its base into a patch of wet sand or a soft clay tablet on the deck, and create a temporary, positive impression of the map. This allowed the entire crew to gather around, study the route, and commit key landmarks to memory. Alternatively, the navigator could simply turn the jar upside down and scrutinize the base directly, using a finger to trace the route they would soon travel across the sea. This transformed the act of unloading cargo into a critical briefing session. As each jar was lifted from the hold, its base could be quickly checked, reinforcing the mental map for the next leg of the journey. This practice highlights an incredible convergence of artistry and practicality. The potter needed the skill of a miniaturist and the knowledge of a geographer to accurately reduce a vast coastline or a complex river delta into a clear, legible design on a small clay disc. They were, in effect, creating the ancient world's equivalent of a waterproof, shatter-resistant microfiche slide containing vital data that could be accessed anytime, anywhere. The amphora's base, a part of the jar that was literally designed to be unseen, became the most important page in a sailor's secret guidebook, ensuring that even in the middle of a trackless ocean, they were never truly lost. Step inside one of these ancient workshops, and you wouldn't just see a craftsman shaping clay. You'd witness a master of disguise at work, a true Renaissance man centuries before the Renaissance. This was far more than a simple pottery studio. It was a clandestine data center, a secure facility where geographic intelligence was meticulously encoded into everyday objects. The potter himself was a unique hybrid of artist, engineer, and spy, entrusted with secrets that could determine the economic fate of entire city-states. His workshop was the vital link in a chain of knowledge that connected explorers at sea to the stability of empires on land. The tools of this trade were deceptively simple: a kick wheel for spinning the clay, a selection of loops and ribs for shaping, and a kiln for the final, transformative fire. But the potter's most valuable tools were intangible. He worked from a rich repository of memory, committing complex coastal profiles and star charts to mind. and from a vibrant tapestry of oral traditions, sailors' songs that rhymed navigational waypoints, and chants that rhythmically listed the sequence of headlands along a profitable trade route. In some of the most sophisticated workshops, there might even have been secret parchments, crude maps or coded diagrams kept hidden from view, consulted only when a new shape or symbol needed to be perfectly calibrated. This knowledge wasn't acquired in a day. It was a legacy painstakingly passed down from master to apprentice, often within the same family over many generations. Consider the immense cognitive load this required. A single potter had to be a virtuoso in two completely different disciplines. He needed an encyclopedic knowledge of geology to select the right local clays and tempering materials that would survive a long sea voyage. He had to master the complex physics of the kiln, understanding how heat and oxygen would alter the final color of his vessels. Simultaneously, he had to hold a detailed mental map of the Mediterranean world in his head, the precise angle of a specific coastline, the seasonal patterns of the winds, the location of hidden reefs and safe anchorages. He was, in effect, a living database, and his creations were the hard drives. This fusion of art and science made the workshop a hotbed of quiet innovation. It was here that the abstract, fluid knowledge of the sailor was translated into the solid, permanent language of clay. A captain might return from a voyage with a new discovery, a faster route using a previously unknown current. He would share this intelligence with the trusted potter, who would then devise a way to encode it, perhaps a slight modification to the curve of a handle, or a new combination of dots and lines stamped near the rim. This collaborative process meant that the maps embedded in Amphorae were constantly being updated and refined, making them the most current and reliable navigational aids available. These humble workshops were not just supporting trade, they were actively shaping it, enabling the flow of goods, ideas, and culture across the ancient world, one secretly mapped jar at a time. So how do we, centuries later, begin to crack this incredibly subtle code? How do we read a language that was designed to be invisible? The answer lies in a fascinating marriage of ancient artifacts and cutting-edge 21st century technology. Modern archaeologists are no longer just brushing dust off of broken parts. They're acting as digital cryptographers, using an interdisciplinary toolbox that would astonish the very potters who made these jars. The process starts not in a trench but in a lab with a device called a 3D laser scanner. Researchers carefully place an amphora on a turntable, and as it rotates, the scanner captures millions of data points, creating a hyper-precise digital twin of the vessel down to the micron. This isn't a simple photograph, it's a perfect, measurable, and endlessly manipulable virtual object. Once you have a digital library of thousands of these scanned amphorae from different shipwrecks and archaeological sites, you can start to ask the computer questions that the human eye could never answer. Specialized software performs a geometric analysis, comparing the subtle contours of 100 different handles or the exact angle of 1,000 different bases. The algorithm isn't looking for what makes each jar unique in an artistic sense. It's searching for statistically significant clusters of similarity. It might reveal, for instance, that 70% of all amphorae found in wrecks off the coast of Cyprus share an almost identical, slightly flattened base curvature, a shape that, when mapped, correlates perfectly with the approach to the island's main commercial harbor, suggesting this was a design feature indicating a safe landing point. This data-driven approach removes our modern biases, allowing the patterns hidden in plain sight to finally emerge from the noise, but shape is only part of the story. To trace where these jars began their journey, scientists turn to the science of materials. Using a technique called X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, They can point a handheld scanner at an amphora and within seconds get a readout of its precise elemental composition. Every clay source has a unique chemical fingerprint, a specific ratio of iron, calcium, potassium, and other trace elements. By building a massive database of clay signatures from known ancient quarries and workshops, researchers can often pinpoint the exact hilltop or riverbank where the clay was dug, sometimes within a few miles. This tells us not just where a pot was made, but by extension, the likely trade network it was destined for. Finding a jar made from clay unique to a small Greek island in a shipwreck off the coast of Spain suddenly adds a new, previously unknown line to our map of ancient maritime commerce. The most complex decryption work happens with the symbols and markings. Here, archaeologists employ pattern recognition algorithms similar to those used by intelligence agencies to break codes. The software is fed images of thousands of amphora stamps and inscriptions. It doesn't know what the symbols mean, but it can identify which ones consistently appear together on jars from a specific region or time period. It might detect that a particular combination of a dolphin stamp and 3 vertical lines only appears on jars linked to voyages between Alexandria and Rome during a certain decade. By cross-referencing these symbol clusters with historical records of weather patterns, naval battles, or economic treaties, researchers can start to assign probable meanings. That dolphin might indeed confirm safe waters, while the 3 lines could indicate a journey of 3 days' duration to the next major port. It's a painstaking, iterative process of hypothesis and digital testing, slowly rebuilding a lexicon that was once passed down through whispers and hands-on experience in the potter's workshop. Of all the discoveries that support the theory of mapped amphorae, few are as compelling as the artifacts recovered from the Antikythera shipwreck. This wasn't just any sunken vessel. It was a massive Roman-era cargo ship, lost off the treacherous coast of the Greek island of Antikythera around 60 BCE. Its discovery over a century ago was a sensation, primarily for the stunning bronze and marble statues it carried. But for our story, the real treasure wasn't the art, it was the humble, everyday amphorae that filled its hold. These jars offer a perfect, frozen snapshot of how these secret maps were used in actual practice on a real voyage. We know this ship was on a monumental journey, transporting immense wealth from the eastern Mediterranean, likely the coast of Asia Minor, back to the heart of the Roman Republic. This route was notoriously difficult, weaving through the maze-like Aegean Sea, which is dotted with countless islands, hidden reefs, and unpredictable currents. Navigating this required more than just courage. It required precise, reliable information. The ship's amphorae, once thought to be mere containers for wine or oil, appear to have been a key part of the navigational toolkit. Researchers examining these jars have noticed something fascinating. They aren't all the same. There are clear, consistent variations in their forms that correspond perfectly with the stages of this perilous journey. Take the handles, for instance. Several amphorae from the wreck feature handles with an unusually pronounced, almost sharp, inward curve at the top. At first, this was considered a minor stylistic quirk. But when maritime archaeologists mapped this feature against the ship's believed route, a pattern emerged. This specific handle shape is predominantly found on jars that chemical analysis shows were loaded later in the voyage, as the ship entered the more complex island channels of the central Aegean. That sharp, hooked curve seems to be a deliberate design choice, a tactile warning to the crew symbolizing the need for careful, sharp turns to navigate the narrow straits between islands like Milos and Crete. It was a constant, physical reminder of the precise maneuvering required. Furthermore, the base of one particularly well-preserved jar held another clue. It was stamped with a symbol that had long puzzled historians, a series of small circles surrounding a single central dot. For decades, it was catalogued as an unknown maker's mark. However, when viewed through the lens of celestial navigation, the pattern becomes brilliantly clear. The configuration is a near-perfect match for the star cluster known as the Pleiades. In ancient seafaring, the rising and setting of the Pleiades marked crucial turning points in the maritime calendar, dictating the beginning and end of the safe sailing season. This stamp wasn't just a brand, it was a sailing instruction baked onto the jar itself, perhaps indicating the optimal timing for this specific leg of the journey, or serving as a stellar reference point for nighttime navigation. The ship itself, laden with priceless cargo, represents the high-stakes world of ancient trade. The loss of such a vessel would have been an economic catastrophe. This context makes the presence of these mapped amphorae even more significant. They weren't just a convenient option, they were a critical risk management tool. The crew was using every advantage available to them, from the legendary Antikythera mechanism, the complex astronomical computer found aboard, right down to the shaped clay of their own storage jars. This case study moves the theory from the abstract into the concrete. It shows us that on at least one real ship, on one verifiable route, sailors were indeed reading the secrets hidden in their amphorae, using them to safely guide a fortune through some of the most challenging waters in the ancient world. Think about what was truly at stake here. It wasn't just about getting a shipment of wine from point A to point B a few days faster. A reliable, safe, and efficient trade route was the equivalent of a modern-day patented invention or a proprietary algorithm. It was intellectual property of the highest order, and it represented an immense financial advantage. The city-state or merchant family that controlled the fastest route to the tin mines of Cornwall or the most secure passage to the grain silos of Egypt held immense power. This knowledge was a closely guarded secret, worth more than the cargo itself, because it was the key to unlocking all future cargo. Losing that secret could mean economic ruin, not just for a single merchant, but for an entire port city that relied on its trade monopoly. This is why the Amphora was such a masterpiece of clandestine design. Pirates were an ever-present threat, but business rivals were often the greater danger. If a competing merchant could get their hands on your written sailing logs or maps, they could instantly replicate your hard-won routes and undercut your prices. But what could they possibly learn from a captured amphora? To them, it was just a pot. They would see its contents as the prize, utterly blind to the fact that the real treasure was the vessel itself. The secret map was hidden in the most brilliant way possible through total integration. It wasn't a separate document that could be stolen, it was the physical object. The map and the container had become one and the same. This system created a self-perpetuating cycle of dominance. A powerful trading house, like those in Phoenicia or Athens, could establish a route using their best navigators. They would then commission amphorae from their trusted potters, who encoded the route's secrets into the jar's very design. These specially mapped amphorae would then be used on all subsequent voyages along that route. The sailors, trained to read the subtle language of the clay, had a durable and ever-present guide, making their journeys faster, safer, and more reliable than anyone else's. This efficiency lowered their costs and increased their profits, which in turn funded more voyages and further solidified their control. The amphora became both the tool and the symbol of their economic supremacy. The sheer genius of using such a common, everyday object cannot be overstated. A hidden scroll or a coded parchment would be suspicious if discovered. It would be immediately recognized as something of value and taken for decoding. But an amphora, they were everywhere. They were the cardboard boxes of the ancient world, utterly essential, completely unremarkable, and utterly disposable once emptied. A rival spy could sift through the garbage of a bustling port and see hundreds of nearly identical broken jars, never realizing that each one held the fragments of a map that could have made them wealthy. The secret was protected not by a lock and key, but by the perfect camouflage of normalcy. The most valuable navigational secrets in the ancient world were hiding in the trash, and that is precisely what kept them safe for centuries. Yet to view these amphorae solely as tools of trade or navigation is to miss half their story. They were also profound cultural artifacts, silent ambassadors that carried not just goods, but the very identity and beliefs of the people who made them. Every jar was a cultural snapshot, a blend of practical need and deep-seated tradition that connected distant worlds across the Mediterranean. When a Greek potter shaped a jar destined for Egypt, he wasn't just encoding a route, he was sending a piece of his homeland, infused with its artistic spirit and mythological soul, on a journey across the sea. This cultural dialogue is vividly expressed in the decorative motifs chosen for these vessels. A jar made in a region that worshipped Poseidon might feature a subtle wave pattern etched into its neck, a nod to the god of the sea that was both a spiritual offering for safe passage and a practical symbol for ocean currents. Similarly, an amphora crafted near a temple of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, could be adorned with a faint, painted stalk of grain near its base. To a rival, this was simple decoration, but to an initiated trader from a culture that shared these beliefs, it was a multi-layered message. It confirmed the jar's origin in a fertile region, hinted that its contents were likely grain, and invoked divine protection for the journey, all within a single, elegant symbol. The incredible part of this system was its universality. A Phoenician sailor, a Greek merchant, and an Egyptian dockworker might all speak different languages and pray to different gods, but they could all participate in this shared language of clay. The shape of a handle or the pattern on a base transcended spoken word, creating a common ground for commerce and communication. This wasn't just a network of trade routes. It was one of the earliest examples of a truly interconnected world, where diverse cultures collaborated through a system of unspoken, mutual understanding baked into the most mundane objects of daily life. These amphorae, therefore, stand as a powerful testament to ancient ingenuity. They represent a world where art was not separate from science, nor commerce from culture. A simple storage jar could simultaneously be a navigational chart, a bill of lading, a religious icon, and a cultural export. This fusion of purpose reveals a holistic way of thinking that modern society often struggles to recapture, where every object was endowed with multiple layers of meaning and utility. In decoding their hidden maps, we don't just learn about ancient geography. We gain a window into the ancient mind, a world where creativity and practicality were seamlessly woven together into the very fabric of everyday life. The night sky was the ancient sailor's most trusted roadmap, a vast, glittering dome where constellations wheeled with the seasons and individual stars held steady as fixed beacons in the darkness. But how do you carry that celestial map with you onto a rocking ship, without a fragile parchment that could be ruined by spray or stolen by a rival? The answer, once again, was hidden in the clay. Ancient potters ingeniously encoded the principles of astronomy directly into their amphorae, transforming these humble jars into durable, portable observatories. This wasn't just about adding pretty star patterns. It was about embedding a functional, scientific tool into the very fabric of maritime trade. Consider the practical challenge of nocturnal navigation. During the day, a sailor could read the sun's position, observe the color of the water, or follow the flight patterns of birds. But at night, especially on an overcast evening when the coast was lost to view, the stars were the only guide. The North Star, or Polaris, was the single most important fixed point in the Northern Hemisphere. its constant position above the North Pole providing an unwavering reference for direction. A potter, informed by a sailor, could encode this critical information into something as simple as a handle's attachment point. On an amphora intended for northern routes, the point where the handle met the jar's shoulder might be deliberately aligned or subtly notched to symbolize the angle at which Polaris should be sighted from a specific latitude. A sailor on a night watch could run his thumb over that notch, look up, and instantly verify his heading, all without needing to consult a single written word or complex instrument. Beyond single stars, entire constellations told a story about time and seasonality, which was just as crucial as direction. The ancient maritime calendar was dictated by the heavens. Certain seasons were too dangerous for sailing due to storms, while others offered ideal conditions. The appearance of the constellation Orion in the winter sky, for instance, often signaled the end of the sailing season for Greek and Roman mariners. A potter might etch a series of dots on the base of an amphora in the distinct, belt-like pattern of Orion. This wasn't a random decoration. It was a potent, silent instruction. Jars bearing this symbol were to be shipped before this constellation dominated the night sky, or their voyage would risk being caught in the deadly winter storms of the Mediterranean. Similarly, the heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster in may mark the beginning of the safe sailing season. A small, tight cluster of 7 impressed dots on an amphora's rim could serve as a seasonal stamp, authorizing a spring departure. This level of astronomical knowledge among potters reveals a fascinating and often overlooked link between different classes of ancient society. The average artisan wouldn't have learned this from casual observation. This was specialized, scholarly information. It strongly suggests a direct knowledge transfer from temple astronomers or learned scholar sailors who had spent a lifetime recording the motions of the heavens. These experts would have understood the precise timings of celestial events and their correlation with weather and sea conditions. They would have conveyed this data to the potters, who then translated the abstract movements of the cosmos into the tangible, fixed language of clay. The workshop, therefore, became a unique intersection of science, craft, and commerce. This celestial encoding represents the absolute pinnacle of the amphora's hidden function. It demonstrates a worldview where art, science, and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but were woven into a single, cohesive understanding of the universe. An amphora was no longer just a container or even a simple map. It was a repository of cosmic order. It connected the sailor on the deck of his ship, gazing up at the infinite stars, with the potter in his workshop, who had captured a tiny piece of that infinity in the curve of a handle or the pattern on a base. It was a perfect, self-contained system of knowledge, ensuring that even in the deepest, darkest void of the open sea, the guidance of the heavens was always close at hand. While the overarching goal of hiding maps in Amphorae was a shared practice across the ancient Mediterranean, the methods and stylistic nuances varied dramatically from one civilization to the next, reflecting their unique cultural priorities, technological expertise, and geographic circumstances. The Greeks, for instance, were masters of theory and abstract thought, and this philosophical bent was deeply embedded in their pottery. Greek potters approached their craft with the mind of a mathematician. They were obsessed with geometric precision, symmetry, and the application of perfect ratios like the golden mean. For them, encoding a navigational route wasn't just about drawing a line. It was about distilling the chaotic reality of the sea into a pure mathematical ideal. The distance between two ports might be represented not by a literal measurement, but by the precise ratio between the height of the amphora's neck and the width of its body. A voyage of 5 days could be encoded in a handle designed with 5 distinct, mathematically calculated curves. This love of geometry meant that to read a Greek amphora map, a sailor needed to understand a visual language of proportion and symmetry, turning each jar into a kind of navigational theorem made of clay. The information was elegant, incredibly precise for those who knew the code, and beautifully integrated into the vessel's harmonious form. In stark contrast, the Roman approach was far more pragmatic and systematic, mirroring the empire's famous obsession with order, standardization, and infrastructure. The Romans produced amphorae on an almost industrial scale, with types so standardized that modern archaeologists can often identify an amphora's specific content and origin just from its shape. This drive for uniformity might seem at odds with the idea of hidden, unique maps, but the Romans simply found a different way to embed their secrets. They leaned heavily on their greatest tangible asset, the vast, interconnected network of imperial roads. While these roads were on land, they often terminated at key port cities, and the knowledge of which road led where was invaluable for coordinating the flow of goods from ship to shore and deep into the empire's heartland. Roman potters embedded this intelligence through subtle, often official-looking stamps and inscriptions. A stamp bearing the abbreviation for a particular legion or a provincial governor's name might secretly double as a code for the overland route that cargo should take upon arrival. A seemingly mundane inscription noting the jar's weight could include a numeral that corresponded to a specific milestone distance on a coastal highway. Their maps weren't charts of the open sea so much as logistical flowcharts, perfectly suited for an empire that moved goods with the relentless efficiency of a military campaign. Then there were the Phoenicians, the undisputed lords of the ancient sea, whose entire identity and power were built upon their unparalleled maritime prowess. For them, the ocean wasn't a barrier, it was their home, their highway, and their source of wealth. Unsurprisingly, their approach to amphora cartography was the most sophisticated and directly tied to the art of sailing itself. Phoenician vessels are renowned for their complex, often enigmatic symbolic language, a visual lexicon born from a lifetime of reading the water and the sky. Their amphorae were less about geometric ratios or road networks and more about the fluid, dynamic forces of nature. A series of wavy lines incised around the base might not just represent water, but specifically the powerful currents of the Gibraltar Strait. A symbol of a bird in flight could indicate the predictable seasonal wind patterns that would carry a ship swiftly to its destination. Most remarkably, many Phoenician jars feature symbols that are now believed to be direct representations of star constellations used for celestial navigation. Their maps were less about static coastlines and more about capturing the rhythms and pathways of the ocean itself, providing real-time, actionable data for navigating its challenges. This deep, intuitive connection to the sea made Phoenician amphorae some of the most effective and coveted navigational aids in the ancient world, their secrets guarded even more closely than their famous purple dye. These regional variations are not just a curiosity, they are a powerful testament to how ancient cultures adapted a brilliant idea to their own specific needs and worldviews. The Greek mathematical ideal, the Roman logistical pragmatism, and the Phoenician oceanic intimacy all converged on the same solution hiding maps in pottery, but they arrived there by completely different intellectual and cultural paths. This diversity highlights a decentralized network of innovation, where the flow of knowledge was not a one-way street from a single dominant culture, but a rich tapestry of shared and parallel discoveries. By studying these differences, we don't just learn about ancient maps, we gain a deeper appreciation for the unique character of each civilization, seeing how their greatest strengths and defining characteristics were literally molded into the clay of their most everyday objects. This practice of hiding maps in plain sight wasn't a single, static invention. It was a living tradition that evolved dramatically over more than a millennium, perfectly mirroring the ebb and flow of ancient history itself. In the sprawling, interconnected Bronze Age world, the first iterations of these mapped amphorae were beautifully simple, born from a time when the very act of sailing beyond the sight of land was a monumental feat of courage. Early Minoan and Mycenaean potters, working around 3,500 years ago, focused on the most fundamental need: not getting lost. Their designs often featured crude, deeply impressed lines on the bases of large storage jars that seemed to correlate with the most basic coastal profiles, the unmistakable shape of a distinctive mountain range as seen from the sea, or the simple, sheltering curve of a wide bay. These were less detailed maps and more like pictorial landmarks, a sailor's basic cheat sheet for recognizing the next safe haven on a hopscotch journey along the coastline. The information was broad, functional, and reflected a world where maritime knowledge was still in its pioneering stages, and every voyage was a venture into the partially unknown. The real golden age of the Amphora map arrived during the dynamic Hellenistic period and the subsequent rise of the Roman Empire. This was an era of explosive growth in trade, colonization, and scientific inquiry. As Greek philosophers were charting the stars and calculating the circumference of the Earth, potters were engaging in their own revolution of precision. The simple coastal outlines of the Bronze Age gave way to fantastically detailed, multi-layered codes. It was during this time that we see the full flowering of the sophisticated systems we've discussed: the astronomical symbols, the mathematically precise handle curves, and the complex symbolic languages that integrated mythology with meteorology. This surge in complexity was driven by an intensely competitive economic environment, with so many rival city-states and merchants vying for dominance over lucrative trade routes. The need to protect proprietary navigational knowledge became paramount. An amphora from this period wasn't just a guide. It was a sophisticated encryption device, its secrets accessible only to those within a specific trade guild or family business, designed to keep one step ahead of the competition. A fascinating shift began to occur as other navigation technologies advanced. The invention of instruments like the astrolabe and the refinement of the camel for celestial navigation, along with the creation of more detailed and widespread written periply, sailing manuals, meant that sailors had new, more direct tools at their disposal. One might assume that this would have made the amphora maps obsolete, but their story took a different turn. Instead of disappearing, their role evolved. They became less of a primary guide and more of a vital backup system, a complementary aid prized for its unique advantages. Think of it like this: a ship's captain might have a written scroll detailing a route, but that scroll was vulnerable. It could be ruined by a wave, become illegible with dampness, or be stolen. The astrolabe required clear skies to function, but the amphora, its map was permanent, waterproof, and required no special conditions to read. It was the ultimate durable and discrete reference, perfect for verifying a written course from memory, for making quick decisions in a storm when other tools were useless, or for keeping the ship on track if the primary navigator was lost. Its very mundanity became its greatest asset, ensuring it remained a trusted tool in the mariner's toolkit for centuries longer than we might expect. This entire evolution, from simple landmark sketches to complex ciphers to reliable backups, is a powerful parallel to the broader narrative of ancient exploration. It shows a clear arc from tentative discovery to confident mastery, from sharing basic survival knowledge to fiercely guarding advanced commercial intelligence. The changes in the Amphorae tell the story of the world changing around them, the rise and fall of empires, the relentless drive for economic advantage, and the brilliant, incremental advances in technology. They are a silent chronicle of how humanity's relationship with the sea grew ever more sophisticated, yet always retained a core of practical ingenuity. Even as the Roman world eventually fractured and the Dark Ages began, the fundamental principle of embedding knowledge in everyday objects persisted, a testament to the enduring power of a truly brilliant idea. But the ancient world was not just a place of charts and coordinates. It was a universe alive with gods, heroes, and epic tales that gave meaning to the wind and the waves. This rich tapestry of myth and legend didn't just live in poems told around a fire. It was masterfully woven into the very clay of the Amphorae, transforming practical navigation into a story you could hold in your hands. Potters understood that a sailor was more likely to remember a vivid story than a dry list of instructions, so they cleverly used these well-known narratives as a mnemonic framework, embedding vital sailing cues within depictions of heroic journeys and divine symbols. An amphora wasn't just a map, it was a storybook for the sea, where every twist of a hero's tale could point the way to a safe harbor. Consider the most famous sea journey of them all, the Odyssey. A potter crafting a jar for a route that traced part of Odysseus's legendary 10-year voyage home from Troy could decorate the shoulder with a familiar scene from the epic, perhaps the hero lashed to the mast of his ship, resisting the call of the sirens. To most, this was a powerful myth, but to an initiated sailor, the specific placement of that scene on the jar, combined with the direction the ship was pointing, might indicate the actual location of treacherous underwater rocks or strong, seductive currents that could pull a vessel off course, just as the siren's song lured sailors to their doom. The myth provided the warning, while the potter's artistry provided the precise, real-world location of the hazard. This fusion made the information unforgettable. A sailor wouldn't just think, "Avoid rocks here." He would remember the story of Odysseus and the sirens and know exactly where to exercise extreme caution. Divine symbols served a similar, powerful purpose. The wrath of Poseidon, god of the sea, was the most feared force any ancient mariner could imagine. An amphora bearing his trident wasn't merely a religious offering for safe passage. It was often a very direct and practical meteorological warning. A large, clearly stamped trident on the body of a jar might designate a stretch of sea known for sudden, violent storms or unpredictable whirlpools, zones squarely within the tempestuous domain of the Earth Shaker. Conversely, a symbol of a calm, benevolent sea nymph like Amphitrite, Poseidon's wife, could subtly signal a route known for its placid waters and favorable winds. These symbols translated the abstract and terrifying power of nature into a recognizable, divine personality, making complex nautical information feel personal, immediate, and deeply memorable. This practice reveals a profound and beautiful aspect of the ancient mindset. They did not separate the practical world from the mythical one. The sea wasn't just a body of water, it was the realm of Poseidon. The wind wasn't just moving air, it was the breath of Aeolus. By embedding these stories into their navigational tools, sailors and potters were not being superstitious, they were being brilliantly pragmatic. They were using the most robust and enduring data storage system available to them, storytelling, and combining it with the most durable material they had, clay. A sailor could forget a number or a measurement, but he would never forget the story of how Odysseus navigated between the monster Scylla and the whirlpool Charybdis. If that story was now linked to a specific, narrow strait in Sicily, he would know to steer his ship carefully down the center, just as the hero did. Each voyage then became more than a commercial journey. It was a reenactment of legend, a participation in the great myths of their culture, guided by the silent stories held in the clay jars stacked in the hold. So how did this all work in practice, out on the open water with the wind whipping and the waves crashing? A sailor's life was one of constant, immediate decision-making, and the Amphora map was his quick reference guide, designed for speed and simplicity under pressure. Before a ship even left its home port, the captain or navigator would gather the crew for a crucial briefing session right there on the deck, surrounded by the newly loaded cargo. They wouldn't unroll a precious, vulnerable parchment. Instead, they would pull a freshly sealed amphora from the stack. The crew would gather around as the navigator held the jar aloft, turning it slowly in his hands. His fingers would trace the specific curve of the handles, feeling for the subtle thickness or the sharpness of a bend that indicated the nature of the coming journey. He might point to a series of dots near the rim, explaining that this constellation would be their guide on the third night at sea. This pre-voyage ritual was essential, transforming the abstract shape of the jar into a shared mental map that every man on board could carry in his mind. The base of the jar offered an even more direct method for transferring this knowledge. If the amphora had a particularly intricate pattern etched into its bottom, a spiral representing a river delta or a grid mapping a harbor, the navigator might press the base into a patch of wet sand on the dock or into a soft clay tablet kept on board. This created a temporary positive impression, a quick and dirty copy of the map that the entire crew could study up close. They could use a stick to trace the route, noting the location of a hidden reef marked by a small cross or a safe anchorage denoted by a circle. This hands-on method ensured that the vital information wasn't locked inside a single person's memory. It became a collaborative tool, with multiple crew members understanding the key challenges and landmarks of the route ahead. Once at sea, the Amphora's role shifted from a teaching aid to a real-time navigational validator. Imagine a ship caught in an unexpected fog bank, its visibility reduced to nothing. The sun and stars are hidden, and the coastline is a muffled, distant rumor. In this disorienting void, a sailor's trained memory was his only lifeline. He might retreat under a canopy, take a stored amphora from a protected rack, and run his hands over its familiar form. Feeling that specific, sharp hook in the handle would instantly remind him of the need for a hard turn to port once a particular headland was reached. The tactile memory reinforced the mental one, providing a moment of clarity and confidence when it was needed most. The jar was a physical anchor point for knowledge, a solid thing to hold onto when the entire world had dissolved into gray mist. This system was perfectly adapted to the realities and risks of ancient travel. Written materials were precious, rare, and catastrophically susceptible to water damage. A single wave over the deck could wipe out an entire library of sailing knowledge, but the amphora was immune. Its map was baked in, waterproof, and effectively indestructible under normal conditions. Even if a jar broke, its fragments often retained enough of the original shape or symbols to still be readable. Furthermore, because the information was encoded in a way that was meaningless to outsiders, it could be carried openly without fear of espionage. A captured ship would have its cargo seized, but its navigational secrets remained safe, hidden in the very objects the pirates now considered their own property. This brilliant, practical design allowed ancient mariners to venture further and more confidently than ever before, guided by the silent, steadfast intelligence of the humble clay jars that filled their holds. Moving beyond the practical feel of the handle and the hidden etchings on the base, we find perhaps the most intellectually stunning layer of this entire system, the silent, perfect language of mathematics. The ancient potter's workshop was, in many ways, a proto-scientific laboratory where the timeless principles of geometry and ratio were not just artistic ideals but the very tools of encryption. These artisans understood that for a code to be reliable across thousands of jars and countless miles of ocean, it had to be based on universal, unchanging truths. And what is more universal than mathematics, they employed concepts like the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence not as abstract curiosities, but as a precise, deniable framework for embedding real-world distances and angles into the very proportions of their clay. Consider the golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, a proportion celebrated for its innate sense of balance and beauty in everything from seashells to classical architecture. For a Greek potter, this wasn't just a pleasing aesthetic, it was a perfect cryptographic key. He might design an amphora so that the ratio of its total height to the height of its neck was exactly the golden ratio. To an outsider, the jar was simply beautiful, but to a sailor initiated into the code, that specific ratio was a direct correlation to the actual distance between their home port and the first major stop on their route. A voyage of 100 miles might be represented by that universal constant, 1.618, making the jar itself a kind of proportional ruler. The precision this required was extraordinary. It meant that every jar in a specific batch meant for a specific route had to be nearly identical. Its dimensions held to a tolerance that would be impressive even with modern tools. This is where the potter's toolkit reveals its true sophistication. We know from archaeological finds that these artisans used basic compasses for drawing circles and calipers for measuring consistent thicknesses. But to achieve the mathematical precision we're talking about, their tools and techniques must have been far more advanced than we've traditionally credited. They likely employed carefully knotted strings as proportional measuring devices, or used notched sticks that could reliably reproduce specific ratios on the spinning clay. The potter's wheel itself became a computational device. The speed of its spin and the pressure of the artisan's hands were carefully calibrated to achieve a specific curvature that matched a known mathematical ideal. This wasn't freehand artistry. It was a form of precision engineering where a millimeter's deviation in the curve of a shoulder could throw off the entire encoded message, potentially sending a ship dangerously off course. The implications of this are profound. It forces us to completely rethink the intellectual landscape of the ancient world. We often imagine advanced mathematical knowledge being confined to philosophers like Pythagoras or Euclid, pondering abstract concepts in their academies. But the evidence baked into these amphorae suggests this knowledge was far more widespread and practical than that. A master potter, likely without any formal education as we know it, possessed a working, intuitive mastery of complex geometry and applied it daily in his craft. He was a working-class mathematician, translating the abstract theories of the elite into a functional, tangible reality that guided commerce and exploration. This seamless marriage of high art, advanced science, and sheer practicality is a hallmark of ancient ingenuity, showing us that the boundaries we draw between disciplines today simply did not exist for them. The amphora stands as a perfect symbol of this unity, an object of beautiful form, scientific function, and immense practical value, all emerging from the hands of a single, brilliantly skilled individual. But the story these amphorae tell isn't just one of human ingenuity, it's also a story of the Earth itself. These clay vessels have silently witnessed millennia of dramatic environmental change, and the maps encoded within them are now serving as a unique and unexpected archive of our planet's evolving geography. Think of them not just as guides for sailors, but as time capsules preserving snapshots of a world that has, in many places, vanished completely. The very coastlines, river mouths, and islands that ancient potters so carefully charted have been reshaped by relentless erosion, rising sea levels, and massive human engineering projects. This means that when we decode an amphora's map, we're not just reading a route, we're glimpsing a lost landscape. A powerful example of this can be found in the northern Adriatic Sea. Ancient Roman sources and recovered amphorae from the region frequently describe and depict a series of small, sheltered islands and a complex, deep-water estuary system near the city of Ravenna, which was once a major Roman naval port. Today, if you look at a modern map of the same area, that geography is utterly transformed. Centuries of silt deposited by the Po River have pushed the coastline kilometers out to sea, swallowing those islands and turning the deep harbor into shallow, marshy land. The ancient port is now stranded inland. The subtle variations in the bases of Amphorae meant for Ravenna, perhaps a pattern of dots representing those lost islands or a specific handle shape indicating a deep-water approach, now provide archaeologists with a precise cartographic record of the old coastline. By comparing these clay maps with core samples drilled from the modern sediment, scientists can accurately reconstruct the pace and scale of this silting process, understanding how a major river literally redrew the map over centuries. This makes amphorae incredibly valuable tools for a field known as geoarchaeology, which seeks to understand the interplay between human history and environmental change. A jar's shape doesn't just tell us where people wanted to go. It can reveal why they went that way in the first place and why they later stopped. For instance, a cluster of amphorae found in North African shipwrecks all share a unique symbol, a specific, branching pattern etched near the base that seems to correlate with a river delta. The problem: no such major river exists on that part of the coast today. The Amphora maps, however, point conclusively to the existence of a now vanished river, one that likely dried up due to climate shifts or deforestation in the ancient hinterlands. This single piece of data solves multiple puzzles at once. It explains why a vibrant trading post was established in what is now a barren location, and it provides crucial evidence for historical climate patterns, showing that the region was once far more fertile and well-watered than it is today. This transformative power turns each amphora into a dual-layered historical document. The first layer is the human story of trade and navigation that we've been exploring. But beneath that lies a second, deeper layer, a permanent record of the Earth's own restless history. By studying these artifacts, we don't just learn about ancient economies. We gain a window into ancient ecosystems, understanding how geological forces and climatic shifts opened up some routes while closing others, how fertile regions became deserts, and how sheltered bays vanished beneath the waves. These humble jars, designed to guide ships through space, now also guide scientists through time, preserving a vivid picture of a world in constant, slow-motion flux. Yet for all their profound contribution to the ancient world, the creators of these masterpieces remain almost entirely anonymous. We know the names of kings and generals, philosophers and poets, but the names of these artisan cartographers have been lost to time, their individual genius absorbed into the collective output of their workshops. They were the unsung engineers of exploration, the silent partners in every successful voyage, whose work was so perfectly integrated into the fabric of daily life that it became invisible. Their legacy is not written on monuments or in scrolls, but is instead baked into the very pottery that carried civilization forward, a testament to the idea that the most essential work is often done by those who never seek the spotlight. Consider the immense responsibility they shouldered. A single error in calculation, a misremembered coastal profile, or a poorly fired batch of clay could have dire consequences, leading an entire ship and its crew into peril. They worked without the safety net of modern precision instruments, relying instead on trained eyes, skilled hands, and knowledge passed down through generations. Their workshop was a place of intense concentration, where the abstract concepts of distance, depth, and direction were translated into the tangible language of form and texture. A potter didn't just make a jar, he encoded a promise of safe passage, a commitment that his work would reliably guide others across trackless waters. This was a sacred trust, and the sheer durability and consistency of their creations prove how seriously they took this responsibility. Their anonymity, while frustrating to historians, was likely a deliberate and necessary part of their craft. In a world where trade secrets were fiercely guarded, the most valuable cartographer was the one whose name and methods remained unknown to rival powers. Their fame existed within a closed circle of merchants, ship captains, and their own apprentices. Their greatest achievement was the seamless, unremarkable functionality of their work. The ultimate compliment to a master potter was not public acclaim, but the safe and timely arrival of every ship that carried his jars and the continued dominance of his city's trade fleet. Their reward was the prosperity and stability their hidden maps provided to their entire community. By honoring these unrecognized masters, we fundamentally reshape our understanding of how ancient innovation actually worked. We often envision great leaps forward coming from singular geniuses, lone inventors working in isolation. The story of the Amphora cartographers reveals a very different and perhaps more truthful model, one of deep, collaborative interdependence. The brilliant map was useless without the potter's skill to realize it in clay. The potter's beautiful jar was just a container without the sailor's hard-won experience to inform its design. This was a seamless collaboration between explorer and artisan, between the adventurer who braved the unknown and the craftsman who found a way to make that knowledge durable, portable, and secret. It was this symbiotic relationship between daring and skill, between discovery and design, that truly powered the engine of ancient progress. Their legacy is therefore all around us, not in the form of grand statues, but in the very interconnected nature of our modern world. The trade routes they helped chart and secure became the arteries through which goods, ideas, languages, and cultures flowed, slowly weaving together the disparate threads of the ancient Mediterranean into a coherent whole. Every time we benefit from a globalized economy or marvel at the spread of classical ideas, we are, in a small way, enjoying the fruits of their labor. They built the foundational network not with stone and mortar, but with clay and fire, and with a quiet intelligence that has only just begun to receive the recognition it has always deserved. This incredible theory of hidden maps drawn from digital scans and chemical analysis is now being put to the ultimate test, not in a computer lab, but in the one place where it all began, the potter's workshop. A fascinating movement is underway where modern historians are partnering with skilled artisans who specialize in ancient techniques, embarking on a remarkable project of experimental archaeology. Their mission is disarmingly simple yet profound, to see if they can actually do it. Can they, using only the tools and materials available to an ancient Greek or Phoenician potter, successfully create an amphora that encodes a real, verifiable navigational message? The goal isn't to make a modern interpretation, it's to travel back in time through craftsmanship, to think and work as the ancients did, and in doing so, either validate or challenge the theories developed by high-tech science. The process begins with the most fundamental element, the clay itself. These modern potters don't just order a bag of generic clay from a supplier. They travel to the very regions famous in antiquity, to known ancient clay quarries in places like Attica in Greece or the coast of Tunisia, and they dig. They process the clay using traditional methods, cleaning it of stones and debris by hand, sometimes using ancient techniques like levitation, where the clay is mixed with water and the heavier impurities are allowed to settle out. They temper the clay with the exact same materials an ancient potter would have used: crushed sand, crushed pottery fragments known as grog, or even volcanic ash materials that not only affect the workability and strength of the clay, but also its final color and texture when fired. This painstaking attention to the raw material is the first critical step in ensuring the experiment is authentic. The wrong clay would make the entire endeavor meaningless from the start. Then comes the shaping, and this is where the true magic and challenge unfold. The potter sits at a replica kick wheel, a simple wooden turntable powered by their own foot, not an electric motor. This immediately introduces a human element of variability and skill that modern machines erase. Using wooden ribs, loops of wire, and sponges, tools virtually identical to those found in archaeological sites, they begin to coax the form from the spinning clay. But they are not working from a purely artistic vision. They are working from a set of precise instructions provided by historians, a specific ratio for the handle's curvature based on a digital analysis of an original, or a particular angle for the base that corresponds to a known coastal feature. The potter must translate these mathematical and geographic concepts into muscle memory, into the subtle pressure of a thumb that creates a specific contour. It's a breathtaking collaboration where academic theory meets ancient, embodied skill. The final and perhaps most dramatic stage is the firing. The team builds a replica of an ancient updraft kiln, a brick dome fueled not by gas or electricity, but by wood. Controlling the temperature and atmosphere inside such a kiln is an art form in itself, one that requires constant vigilance. The head potter must judge the heat by the color of the flames and the glow from the peephole, adding specific types of wood at specific times to either introduce more oxygen for an oxidizing fire that creates reds and oranges, or to smother the flames for a reducing fire that produces grays and blacks. This is where the final layer of the code, the color, is locked into place. A miscalculation here could ruin weeks of work, turning a carefully encoded jar into a failed experiment. But when it works, the result is astonishing. A perfect replica, not just in form, but in its very material essence of an ancient mapped amphora. And the results of these experiments have been nothing short of revolutionary. They have moved the theory from the realm of intriguing possibility into the domain of proven fact. Modern potters have demonstrated that the subtle shape variations hypothesized to be codes are not only possible to reproduce with ancient tools, but they are repeatable. An apprentice can be taught to create a handle with that specific warning hook. A team can produce a batch of 50 jars where the ratio between the neck and body is held to a consistent mathematical standard. This proves that the ancient system wasn't a fluke or an artistic accident. It was a teachable, scalable, and highly controlled manufacturing process. The experiments have also shed light on the incredible skill of these ancient artisans, revealing a level of precision and consistency that we previously underestimated. Perhaps the most compelling validation comes from taking these modern replicas to the very people who would have used them, sailors. Historians have partnered with crews of traditional sailing vessels, like replicas of Greek triremes or Phoenician merchant ships, and given them these newly made, mapped amphorae. Without any explanation, they ask the sailors to handle the jars and describe what they feel. Time and again, the sailors' reports align with the historical theories. They describe a thick, robust handle as feeling strong for a rough journey, or a smoothly curved one as calm and easy. They intuitively understand that a jar with a wide base feels stable, like a safe harbor. This tactile feedback from individuals whose lives are still governed by the wind and water provides a powerful human confirmation that the language of clay is not just a historical construct, but a real, visceral form of communication that transcends centuries. This hands-on research does more than just validate a theory. It forges a tangible, powerful bridge across time, allowing us to hold the ancient mariner's guide in our own hands and finally understand its silent, brilliant message. However, this incredible effort to decode the past brings with it a profound responsibility, forcing us to confront some difficult ethical questions. The very act of uncovering these secrets can sometimes threaten their survival, pitting our thirst for knowledge against the imperative to preserve. Many of the amphorae that have provided the most crucial clues haven't come from carefully documented archaeological digs. They've been ripped from ancient shipwrecks by looters, sold on the black market to the highest bidder. When an artifact is stripped from its context without proper recording, we lose far more than just the object itself. We lose the story it was telling. The precise depth it was found at, its position relative to other jars in the ship's hold, the type of sediment that preserved it. All of this contextual data is priceless, and once destroyed, it can never be recovered. A looted amphora becomes a mute relic. Its hidden map might still be physically intact, but the key to understanding its full meaning is often gone forever. This issue of ownership further complicates the picture. Many of these artifacts currently reside in museums and private collections far from their places of origin, often acquired during a colonial era when cultural patrimony was rarely considered. This raises a deeply important question. Who truly owns this history? Is it a global heritage to be shared by all, or does it belong more specifically to the modern nations and communities descended from the ancient potters and sailors who created it? There is a growing and essential movement within archaeology to move beyond simply extracting artifacts from source countries. The goal now is to build equitable partnerships, collaborating directly with local researchers and community stakeholders. This means not just digging and taking, but training, sharing resources, and ensuring that the knowledge and benefits gained from studying these objects are shared with the people whose cultural heritage they represent. It's about moving from a model of appropriation to one of true collaboration. Thankfully, modern technology offers powerful new tools to help navigate these ethical challenges responsibly. The practice of digital archiving is revolutionizing preservation. Using high-resolution 3D scanners, researchers can create perfect, millimeter-accurate virtual models of an amphora, capturing every curve, symbol, and scratch. This digital twin means that the object's entire geometric data can be shared instantly with scholars anywhere in the world, enabling collaborative study without the original ever needing to leave its home country or be physically handled again. For fragile artifacts, this is a miracle. It allows for perpetual study while minimizing the risk of damage from transport or excessive handling. These digital archives become a permanent, open-access record, safeguarding the information against any future catastrophe that might befall the physical object. Ultimately, this ethical approach is the only one that truly honors the incredible dual nature of the amphora itself. These were not created as royal treasures to be locked away in a tomb. They were functional, everyday objects that played a vital role in the lived experience of countless people. They belong to the story of human connection, of trade, of exploration. To treat them with respect through careful excavation, collaborative ownership, and digital preservation is to acknowledge that they are more than just clay. They are messengers from the past, and we have a duty to ensure their stories are not only heard but are also told in a way that is just, inclusive, and sustainable for all the generations to come. And if the humble amphora could hold such profound secrets, what other seemingly ordinary objects from the ancient world are we still completely misreading? The realization that these common pots were covert cartographic tools fundamentally shifts our perspective, forcing us to look at history's entire material record with a new, more curious eye. The amphora is likely just the first chapter in a much larger story of hidden communication, a story we are only now becoming equipped to read. The true excitement lies in the dawning understanding that this was probably not a unique practice, but rather a widespread, sophisticated tradition of encoding knowledge in everyday items, and our technological evolution is finally granting us the keys to decipher it. Imagine applying the same rigorous analysis we've used on Amphorae to other ubiquitous artifacts. Consider the simple clay loom weight used for centuries in weaving. We've always assumed they were just weights, but what if their specific shapes, sizes, and even the grooves worn into them held coded information about textile patterns, trade routes for dyes, or even kinship lines? Or take ancient bricks and roofing tiles, millions of which survive. We look at them and see construction materials. But what if the fingerprints pressed into them, or the specific angle of a corner, was a standardized way for guilds to mark origin, quality, or even the architectural purpose of that specific tile within a building's design? We may have been walking over a hidden language built into the very floors of ancient cities for centuries. The tools to uncover these new layers are moving out of science fiction and into the archaeologist's standard toolkit. Hyperspectral imaging, for instance, can look at a seemingly blank patch on a pot or a stone and detect the faintest chemical residue of a pigment that has long since faded to invisibility to the human eye. A patch that looks like a simple stain of dirt might be revealed as a once vibrant painted symbol, a crucial part of the code that we've been missing. Underwater archaeology, powered by increasingly sophisticated remotely operated vehicles, is granting us access to pristine shipwrecks in deep water, sites that have been untouched by looters and are frozen in time, holding entire cargoes of artifacts whose contextual relationships remain perfectly intact, offering a complete library of these objects in their original setting. But the most transformative tool might be artificial intelligence. Human researchers can analyze thousands of amphorae, but an AI can be trained on millions of digital scans of artifacts from across the globe, from different time periods and cultures. Its pattern recognition capabilities are on a scale we can scarcely imagine. It might detect a subtle, recurring shape in Egyptian canopic jars that correlates with rituals we never understood, or find a consistent mathematical ratio in the design of Roman surgical instruments that corresponds to specific medical procedures described in text. The AI doesn't get tired, it doesn't have preconceived notions, and it can make connections across vast datasets that a human lifetime of study could never achieve, potentially revealing a universal grammar of form and function that underpinned ancient innovation. This isn't just about finding new secrets, it's about fundamentally rewriting our understanding of ancient cognitive capabilities. The presence of such sophisticated, widely understood, yet hidden coding systems suggests a level of abstract thinking and complex communication that we don't typically attribute to these societies. It points to a world where knowledge was not always written on parchment, but was often embedded directly into the objects of daily life, creating a durable, distributed network of information that was accessible to all initiated members of a trade, a guild, or a culture. This reframes ancient people not as primitives, but as pragmatic geniuses who developed incredibly efficient and resilient systems for preserving and transmitting their most valuable intelligence right out in the open. The greatest secret they ever kept might be the full, stunning extent of their own ingenuity. Now that we've explored the incredible secrets hidden within ancient amphorae, I want to turn the lens toward our own world. Think about the objects you interact with every single day. That smartphone in your hand, it's not just a communication device. Its sleek, minimalist design, the specific arrangement of its buttons, even the weight and texture of the materials, all communicate something intentional about its function, its brand, and the era it was created in. Or consider something as simple as a street sign. The color, the shape, the font, these aren't arbitrary choices. They're a carefully designed visual language meant to convey critical information instantly to anyone, often without needing a single word. We are surrounded by these subtle codes, a kind of modern-day equivalent to the potter's silent language, shaping our behavior and understanding in ways we often take for granted. This idea becomes even more fascinating when we look at architecture. Walk through any major city and look up at the skyscrapers. Their shapes aren't just about maximizing office space. The distinctive silhouette of a building can be a powerful symbol of corporate identity, a landmark for navigation, or even an architectural response to environmental factors like wind and light. The deliberate use of certain materials might reference a region's history, or the flow of a public space might be designed to unconsciously guide crowds in a specific pattern. These structures are, in their own way, large-scale maps and messages, embedding cultural values, economic power, and aesthetic principles into the very skyline. So what hidden languages are we creating right now, today, that future historians might struggle to decode? Perhaps the most pervasive modern example is the world of emojis and digital avatars. We've developed an entirely new, globally recognized pictographic language to convey emotion and action across language barriers. Or consider the complex algorithms that dictate what we see on our social media feeds, a hidden architectural code that shapes our perception of the world, built not from clay but from data. The choices made by designers and engineers in our time are the Amphora handles and base patterns of the future, quietly encoding the values, anxieties, and innovations of our digital age. I'd genuinely love to hear what you see when you start looking at your own environment through this new lens. Look at the items on your desk, the layout of your local park, or the design of your favorite coffee mug. Do you see any patterns that might be saying more than meets the eye? What everyday objects in your life do you think hold a hidden purpose or a coded message? Jump down into the comments and share your most interesting theories on the modern hidden languages you've begun to notice. Let's see what secrets we can uncover together, right here and now. The map inside the Amphora stands as a breathtaking testament to the sheer brilliance and resourcefulness of ancient civilizations, a powerful reminder that true innovation often hides in the most unassuming corners of daily life. These humble clay jars were far more than mere containers. They were the culmination of generations of observation, craftsmanship, and covert ingenuity, transforming simple pottery into sophisticated, multi-layered tools of navigation and secrecy. Every single element, from the subtle curve of a handle to the mineral signature of the clay itself, was meticulously crafted with profound intention. This wasn't random artistry. It was a calculated system of durable, discrete communication that supported the entire infrastructure of ancient trade, enabled fearless exploration, and facilitated a rich cultural exchange that spanned continents and millennia. The amphora became a silent partner in the growth of the ancient world, a ceramic key that unlocked the Mediterranean and beyond. As modern technology continues to peel back the layers of this incredible secret, we gain so much more than just historical insights or a new chapter in archaeology. We receive a timeless lesson in human creativity and a profound source of inspiration for our own lives. The story of the amphora teaches us that innovation doesn't always require grand laboratories or complex machinery. Sometimes it thrives by seeing the hidden potential in everyday objects and by combining different fields of knowledge in unexpected ways. The ancient potter was part artist, part scientist, part cartographer, and part spy, a reminder that the most groundbreaking ideas often occur at the intersections of disciplines. This journey into the past challenges us to look at our own world with fresh eyes, to question the ordinary, and to wonder what ingenious solutions and hidden languages we might be overlooking in the objects that surround us today. Thank you so much for joining me on this remarkable voyage of discovery into the secrets ancient potters hid in plain sight. If this exploration of hidden maps and coded clay has sparked your curiosity, if it's made you see history and maybe even your own coffee mug a little differently, then please let me know by liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more journeys into the past's greatest mysteries. I am truly eager to hear your own thoughts and theories down in the comments below. What everyday object do you think might be hiding a secret purpose? What modern hidden languages have you noticed? Share your discoveries and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep looking closer. You never know what secrets you